Hi everyone, and thanks for watching. I'm Lauren and I'm coming to you from my shop today, Guthrie & Ganny, to share with you all of my tips and experience of using the Mind the Maker quilted Thelma fabric to make my Grainline Tamarak jacket. So I actually made this at the sort of mid last winter. I made it in about sort of end of December, January time last year, and those of you that follow me on Instagram would have seen that I had sort of shared it at the time. I get quite a lot of questions about it, and as we're back into the autumn winter season again, we've had an amazing restock of loads of beautiful colours of this pre-quilted fabric. I thought I would just bring everything together and share with you what I did to make my version. So I've got it here. I'm not actually wearing it because I just feel like it might be a little bit hot because it's inside. It is lined with the shearling fleecy fabric as well, which I'll explain to you all in a second. But yeah, I've got lots of photos and videos and little clips and stuff that I can show you so you can really see how this project came together. And I think one of the amazing things about being able to make your own clothes is that if you've got something quite specific in mind with a bit of experience and practice and just being open to experimentation and potentially making mistakes, you can really make something that is like specific to what you want. And last winter I just felt like I wanted something that was a bit longer. I had quite a lot of wool coats, but I wanted something that was a bit longer that would help to keep the rain off. So this fabric that I use, this Mind the Maker Thelma quilted fabric, is water repellent. I mean, if you're like caught in a complete and utter, thunderstorm and it's lashing with rain, you probably will get a little bit wet. But, if it's just like a bit of a shower, then it does repel the water. The water will sort of just kind of fall off of it. So yeah, I wanted something that's going to keep my legs a little bit warmer. So then I started to kind of work out what I would make and what pattern I would use. So the other thing that I'm going to do in this video is share with you some other ideas of different patterns and projects that you can make with this fabric too. I'll put timestamp chapters on the video, so if you do want to skip straight to getting other pattern suggestions, then just hover along the timeline bar. It'll be sort of more towards the end, and I'll give you some other examples of different patterns that you can use with this particular project. But we have just had a restock of it. We've got loads of really beautiful colours, and there's 3 different quilted designs. So the fabric that I used for my coat's got these sort of vertical lines here on it, but then there is also one that's got a really lovely wave design on it here, or like sometimes it gets sort of called onion, like an onion skin shape, so it's sort of nice and wavy and curved. And this colourway here is a new one for us. It's the Dune colourway, so it's a nice sort of neutral one. And then there is also more like a sort of diamond kind of gridded one, which is this one here. This is the Indigo Night colourway. So yeah, there's 3 different quilted designs, and then various different colours too. And what we've also now got available in the shop is the plain fabric that goes with it. So that's what's just out in front of the table of me here. So this is basically the fabric, exactly the same fabric that's in the quilted fabric, but it's just a single layer. So it might be that you want to make your own binding with it, or maybe use it for like facings or other parts of construction, depending on what pattern you're making. So that's available as well. And then we do also have pre-made bias binding too. So again, this is like the exact same fabric, but it's just already made into bias binding, and that I did use that when I made my project. So again, I'll come on to that shortly too. And then also what is new are the matching zips as well. So they are YKK zips. They've got plastic teeth, they're open-ended, so good for jackets and zip-ups because then you can open it. And they are exact colour matches to these fabrics as well. So these are the Mind the Maker zips, and they tone really beautifully. It's really good when you can get matching notions that go with a fabric, because it makes your garment look even more professional. It's really great. So all of that is available on our website. There's a blog post that goes with this video, so again, I'll link to that in the description, and you can get all of the links to all of these bits and pieces in there. So I wanted to go into a little bit more detail now about the Grainline Tamarak jacket that I made using this fabric. So the base pattern for the Tamarak jacket is for a shorter jacket, which kind of finishes, I guess, like hip width, and it doesn't have a hood, so it's quite simple, and you can make it unlined as well. Like, you wouldn't need to put lining in it like what I've done. So actually, if you're looking for something really simple, it is a good option on its own, because the quilted fabric is the same on both sides, so it's almost like it's lined already in a way. But that was the sort of base pattern that I used. Now, Grainline Grainline have a hood expansion pack PDF pattern. It's only available from their website, so they don't have that as like a traditional printed format. But it's really easy to print off. I think it's only maybe like 4 or 5 A4 pages, and then you can just stick them together. So it's quite easy to do that. And again, that's all linked in the blog post as well. So I used the hood expansion pack, and then because I wanted it longer as well, then I just added length onto it. So it's quite simple in construction, and it's literally just like, you know, a front bodice and a back bodice, and I just lengthened it straight down. So to work out how much I wanted to lengthen it by, I prepared the pattern and the size that I was making. So because I was lining it with this really lovely, thick, cozy shearling fabric, again, we've also got that available in the shop too, I sized up by 1 size from what my body measurements were putting me in anyway for that pattern. So I got my pattern piece ready, and I literally looked in the mirror and I held it up, and then I got the measuring tape and I thought, how far do I want it to come down? I wanted it to come sort of just above my knees. So that was how I kind of calculated it for me. Obviously that can be quite an individual thing depending on your height, but just to give you some context, it was 12 inches that I lengthened mine by. So that was how I got the length of mine. Now, if you find that you're spanning some sizes between your bust and your hips, it might be that you want to consider grading out a little bit more, just so you've got more kind of wriggle room around the hips, especially if you plan on closing the jacket up, you know, buttoning it up or using the studs to close it. So I would just check that out. I don't really have that much shape in my hips, to be honest, so I just sort of straightened it back right down. But that's something you might want to consider, is just grading out a little bit at the hips if you are adding that length on. So then I just got dots and cross pattern paper, and I drew a line that was at 90 degrees to the grain line that was just above where the shaping is, because it's got curved shaping at the bottom hem, and I wanted to maintain that. So I added the length above where that shaping was. And then I just used the dots and cross pattern paper to sort of insert that extra 12 inches of length there. The other alteration that I did that was different to the pattern is that I changed the type of pockets that were on it. So I already had the Friday Pattern Company Ilford jacket, which has loads and loads of different types of pocket shapes. So I just used one of those pattern pieces. I mean, it essentially is just like a rectangle with an angular edge at one side. So you probably could just draw something out like that if you wanted to. I wouldn't say you would specifically have to get the Ilford pattern to get that pocket shape, but it was just to give you context of what I actually used. I just wanted that patch pocket, and yeah, just to be able to slide my hands in really nicely. Now, I did also line that pocket, and I decided to line it in some cotton flannel fabric just so it would feel really lovely and cozy. I thought lining it with the shearling fabric would maybe be a bit too thick and bulky, but I still wanted it to feel warm, which is why I just chose a cotton flannel. It was a Robert Kaufman one. We've got various different cotton flannels that you could use for that. So in terms of kind of listing out all of the things that I used for this project and working out how much fabric that you need, I think really what you have to bear in mind is that when you adapt a pattern, you're adding length, you're adding the hood pack in, you know, you're changing the pockets. The most accurate way to work out how much fabric you need for the size that you're making is really to prepare your pattern pieces first, and then mark out on your cutting surface, whether that's your table or your floor, what the width of the fabric is, or half the width you're cutting on the fold, and then laying your pattern pieces out to work out how much you need. I can't actually remember how much fabric that I used, because I was actually using some shorter cut pieces that we had from stock that we had left over in the shop. But I'm pretty sure I did get my bodices side by side, which obviously helped a lot in terms of condensing the amount of fabric that I needed. So that's something to bear in mind. But yeah, you know, if you've got the sleeve and you've got the pockets and then the hood, you know, depending on the quilted design that's on the fabric as well, you know, it might be that you can sort of just play about with the pieces, that, you know, the orientation of the pattern pieces to get the most economical cutting layout for the size you're making and the adaptations that you've made to the pattern as well. So that's what I would suggest doing. In terms of working out how much shearling fabric you need, again, same thing. So I lined, apart from the pockets, I lined all of the pieces in that fabric. So the sleeves are fully lined in that as well, front and back bodice, and then the hood too. So again, it's a case of having your pattern pieces, looking at the width, half the width of that fabric, marking it out in your cutting surface, and then placing your pattern pieces on to work out how much you need. And again, whether you can get your bodices side by side is going to make quite a big difference to how much fabric you need, especially if you're making a longer length. And then for the cotton flannel fabric, it was just a little bit I used for that. I mean, I want to say maybe something like 30 centimetres, because I was just cutting out the lining for the pockets. And then I did also do a little sort of yoke section in the back neckline as well, which I'll talk about in more detail later. But again, that didn't really use that much fabric. Now for the binding, it does use a lot of binding. So I bound all of the seam allowances, I bound them separately as well, round the sleeves, you know, all round the outside of the coat. So it does use quite a lot of binding. I wasn't really sure how much I was using at the time, but I have since kind of measured it on my garment. It's about 13-14 meters of binding that I used, and that was for a size 6, just to give you some context. So that's quite a lot that you need. But again, the most accurate way to work out how much binding you need is to have your pattern pieces prepped and ready in the size you're making with the modifications you've done, and then measuring round them, and that will tell you how much binding that you need. Obviously give yourself a little bit of give and take. You know, you can join it, you can put joins in it as well. So say if you didn't buy enough and you just get more, then you could get more. I would probably just say it's good to have a nice long length for the outside edge. Obviously a join on one of the inside seams is going to be less noticeable, but just because that front edge of the jacket is the binding, then it's probably good that you've got a sort of nice clean run in that one. There is natural joins in the binding anyway. I happen to have one on the outside edge of my coat there, and I don't think you can really see it. But yeah, it might just be that maybe if you're joining it yourself, it's a little bit more obvious. So that's something to bear in mind as well. So now on to actually making the jacket. And this isn't like a full-on sort of tutorial of how to do it. I want to just share with you my sort of hints and tips on construction and how I did it. I would say it's quite an involved project. You kind of have to sort of think about each step as you go along. And actually when I started the project, I didn't totally know how it was going to work out. I just wanted to kind of, sometimes I just really like getting my head into a project and I think about it like the order that I'm going to do things in, and you know, how it's all going to come together. And I really enjoy that part of it. It's a lot of like problem solving and thinking, okay, well I need to do this first before I do that section. So if you're going to make the same jacket as me with all of the same bits and the lining and everything, then yeah, I think you do need to be prepared to just sort of get your teeth really sunk into it. In terms of needle and stitch length, I just used regular thread, and I would suggest using a microtex needle, probably like a size 80, I would say, just because the fabric is very dense, it's very tightly woven, and you really need the extra sharpness of that microtex needle to really pierce through the fabric. In terms of pre-washing the fabric, I did pre-wash the shearling lining. I just washed that on 30 degrees in my machine, and then I let it air dry. It's not really the type of fabric that particularly needs pressed. In terms of the outer fabric, I didn't pre-wash that. You can wash it, but I just didn't wash it because it's not going to shrink or change. Washing it is not going to shrink it or sort of change the texture of it. And what it will do is the more that you wash it, it will start to strip away some of the water repellent properties of it as well. So yeah, I would suggest that you don't pre-wash the Thelma fabric, but if you're using that shearling fabric, then you can pre-wash that. So what I did in terms of actually lining it was I did the flat lining method. So that's where you cut your outer fabric, you cut your inner fabric, and then I put it together with wrong sides facing. So like the back of the shearling fabric, obviously the right and wrong side of the quilted fabric is the same, but you need to pick one. So you end up with one left and one right front bodice and one left and one right sleeve. And then using a long hand tacking stitch, I hand tacked those two layers together within the seam allowance all the way around. Obviously that takes quite a bit of time. I just had to embrace that. But that's what I did for all the pieces. So then it meant as I was constructing it, it was like the lining was just already there basically. So then for the pockets, I bagged them out. So I put the two pieces together and then sewed them round, turned them the right way round. And then for the pocket opening, I think I just hand stitched that close. So that was where I sort of bagged it out from. And then I worked out where I wanted to place the pockets by just holding the bit of fabric that I had up against my body and thinking, okay, where would I actually want to put my hand in? Now, one oversight that I did was because I was top stitching the pocket on like a patch pocket, is that I then had to unpick my tacking stitches that were holding the shearling on, because I didn't want the stitching to be visible on the inside of stitching that pocket on. So that was a little bit of a bump in the road in terms of I had to just undo a step that I'd done, but that was okay. And I did little bar tacks at the top corners as well. So that got the patch pockets on. You'll see that I've also put the lines in a different direction just to add a bit of contrast. And it also meant that I didn't need to try and pattern match the vertical lines on it as well. So that was the patch pockets. Once I'd actually sewn it on, I felt like I could see quite a lot of the lining poking through. And this is at the edge, and this is probably one of like the bugbears of the coat for me, that I wish I'd sort of worked out a different way to do it. So I then ended up like hand stitching using a ladder stitch to try and like pull the backing fabric closer so that I wouldn't see it poking out as much. But you know, as it happens, those hand stitches have come loose in places over time. You can still see a little bit of the lining poking through, but you know, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. I'm sure nobody else notices it. So yeah, that's what I did for my pocket, but it might be that maybe you want to sort of think of an alternative way to do that if you feel like seeing that little bit of the lining there would bug you. So that was my pockets. And then as I actually started to put it together, I found that for putting the binding on, I definitely had to bind them separately as opposed together, because they were just too chunky for the binding to go around like essentially 4 layers of fabric. So the binding's just going around, you know, seam allowances were pressed open, so then it's just going around like 1 layer of shearling and 1 layer of the Thelma fabric. And what I found that I had to do is sew like the first pass of it on with the sewing machine. I did use a walking foot as well, just because it was, you know, it's so thick and chunky, all those layers. But then when I was trying to top stitch it on the machine down, basically it just I couldn't get it to look neat. I wasn't happy with how it looked. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to hand sew it down. So basically I then ended up hand sewing, sort of turning the binding round, and then I used a ladder stitch to like catch that binding to the shearling fabric on the inside, and that sort of helped to hold them open and hold them flat as well, without you then having any top stitching on the outside. So, you know, in hindsight, I think you know, I was going to have to do some hand stitching anyway. But yeah, I just found that trying to top stitch it with all those layers it was too difficult to get it looking even and neat. So that's then the case for the binding all the way around, like around the outside of the coat as well. I sewed it on with the machine first to like the outside, and then I folded it round to the inside, and then I hand stitched it down with a ladder stitch. So a significant amount of hand sewing in this project. It did take a long time, lots of patience, but you know, some projects are like that. You kind of have to just get through it. The other thing that I added to the project was this little yoke detail at the back neckline, and this is just really a kind of cosmetic thing. It doesn't serve any function or purpose. I guess I got my little hanging tab caught in there as well, which is, you know, a quite a useful way to catch it in. But basically what I did was I just used the shape of the neckline at the back bodice, and then just measured down, I think, what's that? It's maybe about 2.5, 3 inches down the centre back, and then just kind of curved it up towards the shoulder seam. I then just hemmed that edge, and this is hand stitched down. So you don't see that stitching on the back of the coat, it's just hand stitched onto the shearling fabric. And then again, just to add like a little bit of contrast or difference, I made a little binding strip out of that same cotton flannel fabric just for that centre back neckline, just finishing off that little edge there as well. It just adds like a little nice detail, but again, you don't have to do that. It's just like a sort of customization thing that you can do. And then I used poppers. I used the Prim anorak snaps for the closure, and I used a punch plier to punch the hole in it, and then I used the Vario pliers to secure the studs in. The new Prim Creative tool wasn't available when I made this. It hadn't come out yet, but you can apply the snaps using the Prim Creative tool as well, which doesn't require as much grip or force with the pliers. But yeah, I use the pliers to apply mine on. So then I think I just used the same spacing that was on the pattern anyway. And yeah, I went quite far down the bottom actually. That's the bottom of the coat there, just because I wanted my legs to be nice and cozy and warm. So I hope you have found that useful, just hearing some of the things that I did to put the coat together. I did really enjoy making it. It probably took longer than what I thought it was going to be, but it was quite satisfying because I was really having to try and problem solve and like work things out as I went along. But hopefully seeing my finished version, I'll just give you some ideas of you know, how you can make your own as well. So there are various other patterns out there that you can use with these really amazing fabrics, and I've put a little bit of a list in the blog post as well with links to all of these patterns. They aren't all ones that we stock. Some of them are PDFs only, or they're just patterns that are only available from the specific pattern company's website. So it might be that you need to get the A0 file, and then we can always print it for you using our A0 pattern printing service. But some of the patterns that I've seen that I think would be suitable, and also ones that have been made up on Instagram as well, is the Burda 6377. And yeah, there was a really nice version of this made up by at Finished Seams on Instagram, and that looks a really lovely version using that quilted fabric. Then we've also got the Fibre Mood Marcia jacket, and then the Cashmere Marco puffer vest, which I think is one that's available if you are like a member of the Cashmere thing. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, it's another nice one if you're not wanting a full-on coat, maybe something simpler as well, because it's just like a little sort of vest or kind of body warmer. And then a newer one, which we do have in stock, we do now have the Paper Cut Patterns Emmy jacket. This looks really cool. I would love to make this one. I am a bit maxed out with jackets, but this is definitely top of my jacket making list next. And then the Megan Nielsen Hovea jacket, we actually used this fabric with that pattern in a kit last year as well, so it definitely works for that. It looks really nice. And then the Fibre Mood Molly jacket, on the face of it looks quite similar to the Tamarak. Again, another quite simple one. And then there's the Fibre Mood Giselle jacket. I love this one. I was actually really close to making this one, but then in the end, at the time, I didn't want to do a zip. But now we've got the zips that match the fabric. So yeah, that could potentially be an option for you. And then there's the I Am Patterns Hathor Gilet. So again, a nice sort of simple body warmer option. And then there's the Fibre Mood Adria coat. And again, another body warmer, the Fibre Mood Gabriella body warmer. It's another really simple one as well. And then also the Vicky So's Abbey jacket. I thought that looked like it could work really nicely too. So quite a mixture of different things there. Some are obviously more involved than others. If it's got a zip, then it's a little bit more involved. It's just a simple body warmer. It's nice and easy because yeah, you don't have to line that fabric. I obviously lined it to make it a little bit cozier and warmer, but you wouldn't have to do that. And then it would, would cut out a lot of construction steps there. So I hope you have found that useful and inspiring, and you get into making a jacket or a body warmer. If you've got any questions or comments at all, please feel free to leave a comment on this video. Or if you need any help or advice, you need like a specific answer to anything, then probably the best way to do that is to either call or email the shop, and the G&G team and I are always more than happy to help. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, do remember to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on my next video. All of the links to the blog post and where you can buy all these fabrics that are available on the website is all in the description to the video as well, so you can check that out too. Remember, we do ship worldwide. But thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.